Welcome back to the 150K podcast. I'm your host, Joe Graham, where we help take your dreams to six figures and beyond. Today, I have with me Chad Osinga. I actually met him on Facebook. We have a bunch of mutual friends, and we just started connecting and on. I'm like, hey, man, why don't you come hop on my podcast and we can jam together? But Chad, for people that don't know you that well, tell us a little bit about your background, what you do, and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me. I'm super stoked to be here. So I grew up in a small town in Stewart Strat, Virginia. My mother has always struggled with drugs and addiction. When I was born, though, I had Erb's palsy on the left side of my body. And the doctor basically said, hey, you need to work with this kid or he'll lose mobility. And so she took like a little hiatus from the drugs just to help me. And I thank God and the stars that she did. But then shortly after that, it was right back to the drugs. And it got really bad. By the time I was 14, I had drug dealers living in my home. I was, now malnourished. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yep, malnourished.
I was not eating well. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I actually was anemic and didn't even know. My house was raided shortly after that, around 14 years old, by various law enforcement agencies. My mother was sent to federal penitentiary, and I was sent to family in Oklahoma on a probation conditionary type setting. And I didn't know this family very well. They were deep into church, and I don't have anything against church going people, but this was just my life. And they worked for the church. They were very well respected in the church, and they treated me like the drug addict kid, right? They were getting paid to house me, which I didn't know at the time, by the state. And they, like, when I got in trouble at school, they would stick me in a corner, okay, like you would a 5-year-old. And they would make me eat my food there, do my schoolwork there, and then stay there until it was time for bed. When they would discipline me at higher levels, which means beat me, they had a wooden paddle. And I'm not against discipline, but I am against abusing your kid.
Yeah, there's a difference. I'm with you. Yep.
There is a very fine line. And I would be black and blue and bleeding from the small of my back down to, the lower parts of where my bottom was. And, it was just, I've been thrown down a hall because, over really, really small, minute things that they just called me a liar, and whatever I said, they didn't believe. And I was always the enemy. Right. And, I ended up running away from them twice. The first time I got caught. Yeah. The second time I made it all the way back to Virginia, where I'm from. And I was arrested the day after that by local, law enforcement for breaking that probation. So when I got back, they gave custody to a different family member. Everything was going, somewhat well, but the damage was really done. I was messed up in the head. I was very angry at the world. I didn't care. And I would challenge authority at every step of the way just for fun. I didn't care. And then I met this girl, okay, who changed my life. She changed me. She was a beacon of light that I didn't even know existed. I didn't care about life. I didn't even know if I was going to make it to 25, Yeah. And she basically said to me, hey, get your shit together, man. If you want to be with me, you're going to have to change some things. And, it didn't happen right away, but slowly I started changing things. We ended up getting married and had our second child, but we were still living in low income housing. And I was like, this can't work, right? I don't want my kids to grow up like I did. But I didn't have any skills. I had dropped out of high school when I was in 9th grade. Like I didn't have anything to go and leverage, me with. So I always looked up to my grandfather. He was a Marine. So I was like, all right, military, right? I'm gonna do this. Well, I go to the Marines and they wouldn't accept me because I had dropped out of school and I had tattoos on my forearm. They were like, no, that's not happening, guy. But they gave my name to an Army recruiter and they took me in with open arms. They were like, hey, the Army will take you. Okay.
There you go.
We take anyone. Yeah. So I went with it. And it was the single best decision other than changing for my wife and my kids that I've ever made in my life. At first, it was definitely a struggle because I had never had structure and discipline in my life. And I you try to buck it and then you realize this ain't working,
Right.
And as soon as I realized, I actually talked to a lot of people I coach, and I try to mentor about burning the bridge, right? And not giving yourself a way out. Because when you do, you find this thing on the inside of you that you didn't know existed. And the only reason I preach it is because this happened to me. This is what the military did to me.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I accepted that this is where I was, there was no getting out of it, right? I couldn't go back to comfort. I went head over heels in love with it, man. Like I started studying, I started really immersing myself in my craft. And then I was able to be accepted into a special operations sniper course. And, I was the most junior guy there, right? Another, situation where I kind of went all in on myself. And, by all accounts, I should have been the first one who failed. The guy that drove me to this class, he failed the first day. That's how the attrition rate was just super, super high. But somehow I worked harder than everybody in the room. And that's the other thing I teach everyone is you have to be willing to work harder than every single person in the room. It doesn't matter if they have more experience. It doesn't matter how cool they are. It doesn't matter. All that stuff is negated if you are willing to work harder than they are. And
100%.
When I did that, I found success. And I was one of the few that was able to graduate. I went on to become a combat applications instructor, and I was, teaching FBI, SWAT teams, U.S. Marshals. I mean, you name it. I had people flying all over the country just to train with me. And I really found my calling, my purpose in life. During this time, though, of high success, life kind of hit me in the nose again. My daughter had a stroke at the age of 5. We were in Germany at the time. I was about to actually redeploy to Afghanistan. And I get this call that she, from her school. So we go. No one's telling us what's going on. Long story short, they misdiagnosed her at the first hospital for 24 hours. They thought she was having seizures until a neurologist came in and said, hey, no, man, this is a MRI that we need. And they gave her the MRI and they were like, dude, this is a stroke. This is bad. So her brain was actually swollen so bad that if they didn't do emergency surgery, they needed to do a craniotomy, where they cut half the skull out and allow the brain just to have room to expand.
Okay.
So we get rushed to Hamburg Hospital in Germany. They do that. And I love the German hospitals for one thing, and that is they put the patient first. It's not about money. It's about the patient. We didn't even sign a consent form prior to her going into surgery. It was crazy. But long story short, while this was happening, my wife gave birth to my third child while my daughter was in ICU fighting for her life. So I was skating back and forth from birth and something that's supposed to be, awesome to just complete doom and gloom on the other side. And so as this process was going, they determined that they'd only seen something like this happen to a child maybe 3 times. They thought it would be best that we go to America and have an American, team take over. But because my third child had just been born, they were not going to allow my wife and him to fly. So we were separated. And when we got to Walter Reed Medical Center, which was at the time, it was in Walter Reed, they're in Bethesda now. They told us that my daughter would be a vegetable, that she would never walk, talk, or eat on her own before, that the damage had been done. They misdiagnosed her. It was just really bad. And the rare disease was still spreading to the right side of her brain. So they had to put her on chemo and steroids at the same time to try to, negate its movement. And it was just a very long process. But when I was going through this, I told my baby something. I said, look, baby, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know we're not going to lay down and fight. Lay down and do nothing. We're going to fight.
Yeah.
Right. And so she had all these stuffed animals in a room, and she couldn't hold herself up. So I held her up and I said, baby, take these stuffed animals and throw them against the wall. I know you're mad. And she kept doing them and doing it and doing it. And then I would take her legs and move them like she's walking. And we would do that up and down the hallway, all through her room. And within 4 months of me continually telling her that she was going to walk, that she was going to be better and live a substantial life, she walked.
That's
She
awesome.
was able
That's
to,
amazing.
yeah, she was able to speak. And it wasn't super clear at first, but words were coming out. And for me as a father, I'm like, "Whoa, Jesus!" Right? Like this is happening. Sweet baby Jesus, we're in it, right? And so little things started happening and started, compounding over time. And she started really gaining confidence in her own ability. And she just fought and fought and fought. And, now she's 17 years old. She's, working at the mall. She's, about to graduate high school. She still has a lot of struggles. She has severe, damage to her brain. Like the right side of her brain doesn't work. If you look at an MRI, it's just all black. And so she has her struggles, right? But beautiful spirit, beautiful fight within her. But God wasn't done with us. As this was happening, we had 2 children. I told you about the one that was in the hospital. And then a year later, we gave birth to our 4th. Well, we come to find out shortly after our 4th child was born that they both had autism. And they happen to be on both different sides of the spectrum. And if you know anything about autism, I don't think any one of them are exactly the same. They are all a little different and, have different struggles. So it was, at one point we had 3 children in, therapies 4 or 5 days a week. It was just, and I was working still in the military. So it was quite the experience. Around 2015 though, I had been injured too many times. I went off a roof in Iraq, messed up my head and my neck and my eye. And I had multiple surgeries and they just said, "Hey, we got to retire you." And I had spent about 10 years in the military. And when they did, they took my mission away and I went on a really dark spiral, right? Like it was the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I started drinking. And at first it was to deal with the PTSD and the nightmares. Because as soon as I didn't have the mission, my mind was like attacked, right? With all these things, even from childhood, it was like things I didn't even know I didn't deal with were there. And I was losing my wife, and she's my best friend, right? I was losing my relationship with my kids. They're my second best friend. And I knew I had to do something. So I took up riding motorcycles to try to combat this mental fight that I was in. And in 2018, I was making a left turn and a kid wasn't paying attention. He ran a red light and blew through me at 45 miles an hour. And he put me into a guardrail, destroyed my motorcycle. And it took me about a year to recover. And, most people thought I was going to die. There was a point where I didn't know where I was going to end up on this thing. But I ended up bouncing back. And I had this fear every time getting in the car or doing anything. I just knew I had to face it. So I got back on a motorcycle. I had a buddy rebuild the motorcycle that they said couldn't be rebuilt. And I got back on it. And in 2020, I was riding with a group of guys, thought I was doing it the right way this time. I had, 5 other Harleys with me. How you cannot hear 5 Harleys is beyond me.
Yeah, I don't know how you.
This guy did. He merged. We were on I-95. And he merged into my lane and he pinned me into a Jersey barrier. I ended up they were expanding I-95 at the time and they were so there's all this construction to the left side. And when he hit me, he hit my bike so hard, it never fell down. I have pictures. It was like pressed into the cement. Like, I don't even know how to explain that. It was not going anywhere. I had to pry it off. And then I went flying into this construction zone. And I had a few military buddies with me, so they were able to apply first aid until the ambulance got there. But I ended up flatlining on the way to the first hospital. They realized very quickly that my injuries this time was like way worse than my first accident. I was in really bad shape. And so they had to send me to Richmond Hospital in Virginia. And so I was medevac there. And in the first surgery, they didn't understand how bad. No one really knew. The MRI didn't show how severe all these injuries were. So when they opened me up, they were like, holy moly, right?
Mhm.
Like, this is way more than what we thought. So they had to put me back into another emergency surgery for the second time. And I don't know if you've ever had surgery, but they line you up right before you go into the surgery room and
Mhm.
just check your vitals, make sure you're okay. And they're talking to me, and I think that I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you, but I am not. I'm like, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
They think that I'm having a stroke, but and my heart rate just skyrockets to like the 190s,
Mhm.
and I flatline.
Yeah.
So they rushed me into a different room. I don't really know a lot of what happened until I woke up. But when I woke up, I was actually in the arms of nurses and a doctor. Well, I think it's a doctor. Everything was a little blurry, but I could
Mhm.
hear everything like crystal clear. And they had two IVs in my arms trying to get my heart rate down. And I could just hear them, without them knowing that I was awake, telling each other, hey, we got to do this to save his life. Hey, he might flatline again and not make it. Da, 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 da. And I just looked at him and said, hey, please, my kids need me, man. You
Mhm.
you got to save me. And I thank God every day they did. And when I was in ICU for 7 days, the hospital for 14 days. And if you know anything about hospital stays, that's a long
Yeah,
time. They
that's a
try
very
to,
long time. Very long time.
and in that hospital room, it was, during the COVID pandemic, 2020. So no one could come see me. My phone got destroyed on
Mhm.
the bike. I didn't have anything but reruns and nurses every 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And I had to face myself. I had to, all these things that I hadn't dealt with, right? That I kind of pushed away. Even though I had a lot of success in the military, I was a wreck on the inside. And I tried to fill in the gaps through this outward success, but inside I was a wreck. And I finally faced me. I faced the
Mhm.
man in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
Did some mental gardening is what I like to call it. And I took some roots out. I began to focus on me like really heavily. I couldn't do anything during the recovery period, right? I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything. So, and I only had one good hand. So I really inundated myself with, just self-help and
Mhm.
I was just reaching for every single thing that would help me become a better version of me and overcome just these demons that I was facing. And I did. I slayed that dragon. And I'm not gonna say that, it's not something that I have to continually fight, because it is. I think our mind is one of those things where it's just like a garden, right?
Mhm.
You don't weed it out and then walk away for 10 years, come back and it's just beautiful, producing great fruit, right? It's a constant, process of cleaning it out and nurturing it and giving it the nutrients that it needs. And I learned that process during my healing, and I realized that God had a really, really big plan for my life. There's no other way to explain it. And, or the universe, whatever people believe in. And so then I just decided, hey man, I'm gonna help as many people as I possibly can. It's not about money. It's not about anything like that. If I can help one
Yeah.
person on this journey, I'm with it. And so that's kind of how I got where I'm at today.
Wow. Now that story, normally, like, I was picturing it while you went through the whole thing. Like, and I'm just going back through my head. So you're born and you have issues, and your mom is a drug addict, and God, the universe brings you through that. Then you get sent to a place that should be safe, but really it's not a safe place at all. It's like the opposite. On the front, it had the look of, we go to church, we do this, yada, yada, but it wasn't. And then you
Right.
go through and you keep going through, and then you find a woman that changes your life. And it's and this is, I just want to parallel this, because there's times in your life when certain people, it may be a spouse, it may be someone else that comes into your life for a reason and a season, and they save you, for lack of a better term. Then you get into the military, things are starting to be good. You're learning, you're still got that fighter warrior spirit in you. And things just keep hitting you and hitting you. And the thing that I've seen, the thread through the whole story, is you're resilient, you didn't quit, and you just kept moving forward no matter what. And that right there, if people can just do those three things, and we're going to get into a lot more here, guys, But if you can do those three things, not quit, be resilient, and keep moving forward, you win. And then like with the kids, and then with the like, you hit pretty much like I have people come on the show and they'll like they'll have like one area, like they'll have the alcohol that they have to deal with, which I've dealt with that in the past, or they'll have like maybe one family issue. But like, dude, you just like when I hear your story, I just think warrior, like just like you're just like a warrior, you're a fighter. So now, because at the end you said that your goal and your mission is to help people. So how do you help people now? Just like open that up for us a little bit.
Yeah. So, public speaking is one of those things I try to, really as many stages, and I'm really big on the youth. Like, I feel like if we can catch them young, okay, because like I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have somebody to say, hey, you come here. You're not doing this. I got to look, if you can see this, you can have this. And when I grew up, I thought that everything that was around me was all I could have. I believe that. I believe that the drugs, the little bit of money that these drug dealers flashed around, that they really weren't rich, but I thought they were. And I thought that was success.
Yeah.
And I believe if we can give these kids a different picture, if we can show them, that there's so much more, man, you can be so much greater than that. And they begin to believe it. Once they buy into that, man, there's no stopping the train, right? There's no stopping. And so I do a lot of that. I write, I write a lot of different publications. I've been in Authority magazine, I think 5 times, the Up Journal. Actually, I have an article in the Good Housekeeping.
Good Man Project or Good Housekeeping? Cool.
Yeah, Good Housekeeping just did an article on me. It hasn't been published yet, but it will be. I also will be in a book here soon. I'm writing a book and, as well. So I'm going to be in someone else's. And then I also just met a publication that it's called scarysymptoms.com. And they talk about just different things of the special needs community. And so I was honored to be able to write for them as well. I've done 2 articles for them. So I do that. And then I've started coaching and mentoring, people along the way. And I really feel like, I don't know, people, when I was going through this process, the one thing I didn't want is someone to look into my life, tell me how to fix it. And then the person telling me how to fix it didn't have a clue about my life.
Yeah.
So I tried to position myself in a way that, man, I've been there. You know what I mean? Like, I know what it's like to fight with my wife. I know what it's like to be on the brinks of divorce. I know what it's like to make an excuse to drink every single day. I know what it's like. Okay. But I also know what it's like to overcome it. Okay. Yeah. And you can experience that as well. All right. And there's some universal things that I didn't come up with, but I searched and found. And if you apply these things, you can have this same victory that I experience and taste each and every day. So that's kind of what I got going on now.
No, I love it. I love the fact that, see, I'm all about humanity. I'm all about helping people, kindness. Like a lot of entrepreneurs in my game, what I do is I help them understand that sales is problem solving, that they can help people that way. But I love the fact that you have a passionate, for lack of better terms, pursuit to empower people. You want to see people win. And I agree with you. The youth, really, that's where the major decisions are. Like, if you would have had someone, and you wouldn't be who you are today. And I think things happen for us, not to us. So let me clarify that. But, having the ability to go now and share your story and tell people about it and then give them hope, because that's what most people need. That's what most people, whether or not you want to own a business or not, people need hope. They need to understand that what you're born into is not where you're stuck. It's just your starting point. Everyone has different starting points. You're perfect proof. I'm proof. You can improve and become better and level up and become the person you want to be. So I love that. Now, we definitely aren't done, but I always like to pop this in the middle. Where can people find you? Because I'm probably sure there's already people saying, hey, where can I find Chad?
Facebook, just Chad Osinga. My website is mrtenacity.com. Super simple. My email is mrtenacity40@gmail.com. Send me a message. link up with me. I'm a normal guy. I'm here to help. So as long as you don't come in my DMs trying to sell me everything, I'm good to go.
I'm with you. I am with you there. But let's dig into this a little bit more. So we were talking about helping people and mindset and giving people hope. So when someone comes into your world, how do you help them with it? Because I know you went through a lot of stuff, but what's the process look like for people?
Yeah. So well, and first I want to piggyback off something that you just said that I think is really, really crucial. We're in the information age, right? We don't lack knowledge at all. Okay. Right. We can pick up our cell phones and type into Google whatever you want to know, and you can get publications from some of the highest authorities in whatever the field is that you're looking at. So the information is there. People lack inspiration, right? And so when we live inspirational lives, that's the first thing, right? So when people come to me and say, hey, I want help, I try to break down where are you going, where are you going, and where are you at, but the process is really simple. I try to get them, I believe really heavily in journaling, because it saved my life. But I don't believe in journaling like maybe some people do. I believe that you must be intentional about what we're going to do. If you want change, you have to be intentional.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, when I journal, I write, and I've piggybacked things from different people to come up with this, but I take at least 5 things in that day, not from the day before, in that day that I'm grateful for. Okay. So, and I do this, I always journal at night because, during the day, I want to be able to live intentionally, right? So I want to search for those things I'm going to be, grateful for. Okay. The next thing is a win. And it doesn't, and what I tell people in the beginning, people think that wins have to be these massive things. If you have a rocky relationship, let's say with your child, okay, and you are able to negotiate that and walk away in a peaceful manner, you won.
Yes.
If you are used to sleeping in and you're supposed to wake up at 6 or 5 or whatever that time looks like for you, and usually you hit that snooze 5-6 times, but you don't that day, you just won.
Yep.
If you have more than one, great, write them down. Okay. But find at least one thing that you did right. One thing that you conquered and slayed that day, no matter how small it is. And people don't realize the power of compound effect. These things, we build off these things, right? Waking up on time, making our bed, journaling. Let me get back to the journaling. So okay. And then I try to learn something new every day. And when I say learn, not like more for personal growth. Okay. And, this might look different for, I believe different strokes for different folks. And so it might look different for other people, but I try to find something that empowers me as a person. And I write that down. And then the last thing that I do when I write is probably the most important thing, but that's I find something that I didn't do right that day. Okay. That I didn't handle well. And then I don't give myself an easy out. I then write what I should have done.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
Because a lot of people write, oh, I did this or I did that, but they never are intentional about, okay, how do I fix it? Right. So I don't continue, because you got to get out the loop, right? We're in these loops, right? And they're individually in different areas of our lives. The only way is to look objectively at the situation and say, okay, they did this, I did this, I should, because we can't control what another person does, right? You can't control what they say, what they think, what they feel. You can control you though, okay? And so that power we need to take back, and you can only do that by saying, hey, what do I need to do better? Writing it down and then applying that as you move forward. So that journaling, I do that. I try to get people to find their whys, not just for their goals. People always find the why behind why they want to make $1 million but why are you where you are right now? Why do you feel frustrated when someone criticizes you on whatever, right? Why do you feel the way you do when your wife says X, Y, and Z to you? And trace these things back, kind of like mental gardening, right? Their roots. And we have to trace the roots of the weeds, and or they just grow back. So by going deep in there and saying, why do I feel this way? Why am I, always stuck here or there? Like if you have a goal, since we're talking about 6, 7 figures, let's say you cap out at 1,000 or 100,000, right? Each year. Why? What are you doing during the year that is, capping you out at that price? Because at the end of the day, we can control that. Okay.
100%.
We can begin to look back. And so I try to do that. And there's, tons of things. I don't want to take up too much time, but those are, if I can give you 2 or 3 things that I really focus on, that's it. So yeah.
No, I like it. I like it because I've heard about the stacking of the wins. I have friends that teach, you stack the win, stack the win, stack the win because it gives you momentum. But what I really liked was when you said, but I also address myself and I find something that I'm not doing right and I improve on it, because we can't always be stuck in the win, win, win. We also need to improve because we're the secret sauce. My friend George Ryan talked about that all the time. As an entrepreneur, as a person, what level you're at is how much inner work you do. So I totally commend you on that. The other thing I thought of, because you mentioned this, was you were talking about doing the wins and stacking and all. Did you learn that when you were helping your daughter walking in the hospital? Because that's where my mind went. When you said that, my mind, I see in stories. So I went right back there and you were stacking the wins and you were telling her, no, you're going to do this. Is that when you started to learn that, or did you learn that a little bit before?
A little bit before, like in the military, I had to, so like I had a really hard time mentally growing up. I was called dumb, and they said I was, I had a learning disability. They put me in the special room, basically my entire childhood. So when I got to the military and I started facing these really hard, schools, and I had to learn how to stack these small things I did right, but I didn't know what it was at the time.
Yeah.
I carried that over to my daughter, still not knowing the full thing. It wasn't until, honestly, this second wreck, and I really started diving into all these different personal growth, coaches and gurus, and just attacking knowledge, that I realized, oh, there's a name for this thing. There's like a whole process, and I've been doing some of this, throughout my life to get by, but I didn't know I was doing it the whole time.
Yeah, no, so, and that makes sense. It does. It's kind of cool to see how it actually just has gone through, and you kind of learned it in the fight, where some people now, if they can take and shrink time, it's like, okay, cool, I can apply this.
Yes. Amen. And the thing is like, people look at, like, let's say my life compared to yours or someone else's, and they might say, oh, well, my thing isn't as poor. Yes, it is. Like, whatever your struggle is, whatever your fight is, whatever you're facing right now, is just as important, just as crucial to you. Our brains don't know the difference. Okay. Right. Whatever someone faces, and if you do an MRI of 2 brains of 2 traumatic experiences, but one's overseas, let's say, and one's here in the States, maybe it's a divorce, right? Because people don't realize how sometimes detrimental even a divorce can be on people's mindsets, right? But those 2 things are the same to our brain. So whatever I apply, whatever you apply, and all these other people that are out here, bold enough to say, hey, I figured out what worked for me. Man, apply those things, it'll work. You're just as important. Your situation is just as important as mine or anyone else's. So
yeah, no, that's great. So you said that you did a lot of like self-help, learning, growing. Were you like doing a bunch of books? Are there any books you'd recommend, or are there any people you follow that you said, hey, this person impacted my life?
Yeah, a lot of people. So actually, my wife pushed me into real estate. Okay. When I was recovering, she was like, you need to find something to put your energy towards. And Cody Sperber is who I latched onto first. And it was crazy because it was kind of like this, like stacking of people, I stacked wins, I stacked on the peoples. And that led me to actually Ryan Stewman. And Ryan Stewman, I see that you have the Lions Not Sheep, and that he led me to there. He led me to Eric Thomas. Ed Milet. I didn't even know who Ed Milet was, So there was a plethora of people that I began to just, dissect all of their information. And, Bobby Castro, yeah, he's another one that I really resonate with him because for a couple reasons. One, because he had a really rough upbringing like myself, but he is close to worth I think $1 billion. I think he's close to $1 billion. And I had always, as a child, dreamed of somehow becoming a billionaire. Just, I don't know. It was just one of those things. And to see someone who came up kind of rough like me and didn't have, family support, turn all of that around was just a really big eye opener for me. And it just showed me that I was on the right track and I could also accomplish, these things. But yeah, there's tons of stuff like Ed Milet's new book, The Power of One More. I'm reading that right now. That is a super powerful book and it's easy to read. It's not, if you're not a reader, and real quick for the people that are talking about reading, hey, they're Audible, okay?
There you go.
If you're not a reader, there's no excuse. When I first started doing the reading, I actually didn't buy any books. I went onto YouTube. I had Googled I YouTubed the video, and to my surprise, there's a whole bunch of Audible downloads of a lot of these books. So if you're in a financial pinch and you're like, man, I can't afford this, go to YouTube, download the book, and get at it. Right. So there's a lot of different, hacks you can do to still gain the knowledge.
Yeah, no, and I love that because I agree with you. I love Ed Milet, Shane Lynn, Ryan, all of them. They're great guys, and they all bring a different aspect to kind of because their story and what they've gone through gives them a different perspective, which is great. And all. So my next question would be this. So you've been moving forward, you're leveling up, and we were talking about. You mentioned this earlier. We were talking about, maybe you're capped at 100,000. My mission, my goal with this podcast is to get people over 100,000 because it gets them in the top 30% of income earners in the world. You get over 150,000, you're in top 10%. You get over 200,000, you're in top 3. I think it's top 5. Let me fix my stat there. But here's the thing. Once you get over 100,000, you can start believing. You can start dreaming without the financial pressure like you're talking about. So I call this step 1. That's what the goal of this whole podcast is, get people to step 1 so they can start designing their life by design. How would you, like, we mentioned the people that were just starting out and they're like trying to struggle and get there. What would you encourage them to do besides reading the books? Like, would you encourage them to go to an event, or how else can they level up would be my question to you.
Mentors. I don't care, man, that has changed my world. So I joined Apex Entourage, and that was my first, I guess, big thing. And at the time, I really didn't have the money. Okay. I did, but I didn't. Let me say it like that. Yeah.
It was a stretch. I got you. You had to make an investment in you, which is hard for men to do. I got you 100%.
Yes. And I took that risk. My wife wasn't 100% sold on it, and it was the best decision I've ever made in my life. Okay. Get a mentor, because even in that, then I got introduced to a different group of people who now I'm in their mentor group. And it's the power of these groups, of these mentor groups. Not only do you get personalized coaches who have been or are where you are going or want to be. Sorry, I just messed up all my words.
Are you good?
Two cars have hit me. Sometimes it doesn't compute right, but you want to find someone who is where you are going, okay, has already gained that access, and man, follow their steps. You're still going to put your spin on it. You're still going to be able to do your thing along the way, but learn from the best. Don't put your money in these, there's a lot of fake ones out there. And I made those mistakes before I met Apex. I had put money in. That's why I didn't have a lot of money, because I had invested some money into what I thought was going to help me. And it was a dud. It was a big dud.
Been there. Yep.
Look into them, but your personal growth, look, we if you go to the gym, you'll get a personal coach, you'll get a speed coach, a strength coach, you'll get, the coach that tells you what to eat and what not to eat. Some people, when I used to train people, fighters, they had like chefs that came in and fixed their food and, everything, but we will not do that for our own personal growth. And it is insane. And I'm a firm believer in having multiple ones. Financial. I just met with a financial advisor that I'm about to get. So whether it's finances, whether it's, personal growth, whatever the area is, find someone. And you might have to start out small with just one in the beginning, but do that, invest in yourself. And you're not only going to get a blueprint that works, right, is time tested, but usually introduced to other really motivated people. When people pay to play, it is a different level of commitment. Yep. All these things that you weren't experiencing prior to, and people were shortchanging you, stealing your money, that doesn't really happen on that other side of the fence. All right. This is the one time I tell people that the grass really is greener on the other side of the fence, because you jump over and everybody's in the same situation. They paid to be there too. Right. So they want the max amount of their dollar. And so they network, they help each other, they grow together. And then you're getting top tier coaching along the way on how to do it. So, and then yes, masterminds, go to them if you can. Watch sometimes now on the internet, they have them. So if you can't make it in person, you can do virtual, man, do it virtually, sit down, take notes. And then my biggest thing is this though, you can be taught by Ed Milet himself. Okay. One-on-one. But if you don't implement any of the stuff that they're teaching you, you've just wasted your time and your money. At the end of the day, it boils down to how hungry we are. Will you take the time out each and every single day to do what they're telling you to do? They've already done it. They don't have to do it again. Okay. But we do. So, when you make these commitments, also make a commitment to yourself to follow through, right? To make that change within yourself, and to, no matter how uncomfortable it is, understand that our change and our success is on the other side of that uncomfort. It's kind of like being in a bed when you can't get that right spot. What is it? What does that uncomfort make you do? Move to find what works. That's all this money is doing. It's making you squirm a little bit. So you have to move from where you are, which isn't getting you anything. You're going to get the same exact results, or you can move, right? And you can attach yourself to winners, and in return, you're going to win.
And if you look at your income and where your money's going, you have the money for the most part. There are some people maybe listening that aren't there, but most people have it. You just might have to sacrifice in a different area. But to level up, sometimes you have to make that investment. And why not invest in you? Why work for someone else for the next 40 years and they'll replace you in a moment when you can do it yourself and invest in yourself? I mean, that should be a no-brainer, but that's not what we're taught in the school system. We're taught to be a good worker bee. But people like you and me, we're not. That doesn't fit us. We're going to go out and we're going to change the world and do things that we need to do. So I commend you on that.
Amen.
Any other parting words, thoughts, wisdom you have for my listeners?
I would just say that no matter what you're facing, everything that you could ever need or want is already within you. You might have to unearth it and unbox it a little bit and polish it up, but it's already inside of you, right? The universe created you to tackle whatever's in front of you. Those dreams and those aspirations that you have, they're inside of you for a reason, man. They really are. Like, that's why no two people are the same, or fingerprints aren't the same. There's something special on the inside of you, but you have to be willing to unlock that box and kind of take the journey. And I implore you to, because man, your strength, your success, just that better life is on the inside of you. So go get it.
I appreciate it. And Chad, thank you for being on the show. I truly have enjoyed your story and just chatting with you today, man.
Oh, ditto, man. I loved it. I'm so stoked and honored that you have me.
Awesome. Hey, and thank you all for listening to the 150K podcast, where we help take your dreams to six figures and beyond. Chad's story needs to be heard. Send it to your friends. Send it to someone you know that's maybe struggling or going through something right now. This will impact them and help them. And until next time, get a journal out, write some wins, but also write something about yourself that you need to improve. Have a good day, guys.